Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
Welcome guys to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host Tony Evans. This week's episode is about one of my favourite albums of all time, one of my favourite bands of all, and it's just been reissued in the last year on all formats, on cassette, on vinyl and on CD, and yes, I have all three of them delivered, including the original reissue of it and the original pressing and picture disc. What we're going to talk about tonight is 1989's Prime Evil. This is the first album with the new lead singer for Venom, Tony Demolition Man Dolan, after the original lead singer and founding member of the band, Kronos, or Conrad Lant, left the band after the Calm Before the Storm album in 1987. Now, why he left the band, I'm not going to go into. That's a different podcast. This is just to talk about what happened after he left. Now, you imagine you have a three-piece band, and its founding sort of frontman, bass and vocal and lyricist, one of the main lyricists, comes in and goes. It's quite a big hole to fill. So luckily, because the band is from the Newcastle area up in the north of England, they obviously knew Tony because he'd been in an Atomcraft since '79, which was one of the leading sort of new wave of British heavy metal bands from the north. He originally started out on guitar and vocals, and then he ended up on bass. All for the good for us, because there's only one guitarist in Venom that should be in Venom, and that's Mantis, Jeff Dunn, unbelievable musician. So what happens when Tony comes in? Well, actually, I think what happens is one of two things. Firstly, it has fresh spirit to the band. But secondly, and sorry Conrad if you're listening to this, he brings more musicality to the band. Because he's a guitarist first and foremost, him and Jeff really just hit off and made some, just this to me is their best album since the first two albums. Truly, it's an album out of time. So it doesn't sound like an 89 album. It doesn't sound like a 79 album. It doesn't sound like an album. It could come out at any era and you would go, this band is just on top of its game. It's funky, it's hard, it's aggressive. It has some of the best musicianship I've heard in a long time. Until I'd heard this album. It's produced by Nick Tauber. Now, Nick Tauber has produced a lot of my favourite bands. Marillion, The Stiff Little Fingers, Cockney Rejects, Toya, you name it. He's done it, basically. And he's a very gifted producer. And so to get him on board for this album was a coup, I think. He'd already done A Calm Before the Storm, so he knew the guys, but obviously didn't know Tony, so amazing. So what we're going to do with this episode is I'm just going to sort of go in and give a brief sort of overview of each song by song. It might be a slightly longer episode because there's a lot to cover, but we'll have a break in between anyway. So imagine this is side one, and we're looking at the vinyl when I've put it onto the table. And what I'm looking at the first Prime Evil, the opening track. Now, often on an album, the opening track will either kill it or thrill it. It'll either go sink it or make it soar. And this one just does that. It makes it soar. Prime Evil. You start with the dial-up tones of an online, You know, the old, if you're old enough like me, guys out there, you'd all remember the dial-up tone when you hear it, you know, the squeaks and pips about to go online. Then you get some amazing sort of wind chimey effects. This album also has, for the first time, a fourth guitarist in Al Barnes, for rhythm guitar, and it comes across that way on the album. Anyway, so you have the dial-up tones, and you have the wind chimes, and you have keyboard sort of just suspensefully bringing you into the piece, and then you get this double-layered guitar piece come through, and then with this punch and this hook, you get Tony's vocals. He has this ability when he's on his top of his game, Tone. He's a really nice guy. I'm sure he won't mind me calling him Tone. I talked to him a bit. He rolls his R's. His vocal deliverance he almost spits the vocal at you. It's so forceful, so dramatic, so eloquent, but yet so dark at the same time. I'd never really heard since that much heavily in Venom. I'm sure there were in I think Calm Before the Storm had it, maybe Possession. I just don't really think of them as a band that would have that instrument, but it really, really works here. The lyric is staccato almost. The bass intro is just sweet. I mean, you can hear Tony's influences here, where he's a Sabbath influence, and he's very much influenced. If you watch him live, he's the way that he sings and his demeanour with the great Lemmy. So he has that kind of growl and almost swallowing the mic, but he's attacking those bass strings with this heavy pick. It's just furious, and what a great opener. And it's also the way, how do I describe it? The lyric, the opening, the choruses are just so beautifully timed. There's a pause in between. Just click my fingers there. There's a pause in between. There's a beat taken, and then it's back in, and there's a beat taken, and it's back in, and it's just delicious. And then, of course, after that, we then move furiously onto Parasite. Parasite. What can I say? I think it's my favourite song on the album. It has a delicious way that, again, Tony rolls his R's, you know, in the lyric. It just punches you straight in the stomach. It's just that the second the guitar is doubled again here, because you've got the rhythm and you've got the two guitars, and it even sounds like there's 4 or 5 guitars, and that wouldn't surprise the way that Nick produces albums. There's a pulse, there's a hold and a pulse, and there's a hold and there's a pulse in this song. It's just I think this truly is the best song they have written since possibly, In Nomine Satanas. And that's a big call, guys. Sorry, Tony. I mean, and the guys in the band they've made hundreds of amazing pieces of music. But for me, just personally, this one is my most favourite. Again, the lyric is dark. It's personal. It's about betrayal and not, being told one thing but given another. But hangers on. It's barbed, it's venomous, exactly what you want from a Venom song. And honestly, there's a slight echo on all of the vocals for Tony at this album. It is, I reckon, the best produced album they've done up until 89. Of course, their albums afterwards I will discuss, but up until 89, this album, I think this is when they became Venom, really. I think they drop the lo-fi side of things a bit more. They become more musical, and dare I say it, a little bit more progressive for their music anyway. And then we move on to the crowd favourite, Blackened of the Priests. I saw them 4 years ago here in Canberra. It's the first time I'd seen them live. Obviously, I've never seen them with Conrad or with Kronos. I don't think I've lost anything there. I think seeing them in the basement with my my daughter's boyfriend came along. I brought him along to see them. Was a spiritual moment. I got to be within 3 inches or 4 inches of Mantis's guitar, and him being one of my heroes was just awesome. And Tony just, as being towering above us, spitting out the lyric, and Mantis, sorry, Abaddon just drunkenly thundering those skins. I've said it before and I'll say it again, the greatest bands in the world are often 3-piece, and this is a good reason to say they are just phenomenally tight live. Anyway, Black and Other Priests. So it's a crowd favourite. It's got chunky seesawing guitars. It's got echoes on the vocals, like I said. It almost sounds like Tony's singing it from an altar. It sounds vaguely religious. It's good. Again, they're using a synth and this use of recording technique to give it a depth that a lot of their other albums didn't have. They became, towards the middle end of the 80s, they were a bit cleaner, a little bit more rock and roll. It sort of feels like it's back to At War with Satan, and it would sit really well on that album. It really would. I think this is truly a masterpiece of a track. I mean, I'm going to say a lot about this album because this album is my favourite album. Sorry, I'm clicky keyboard. There, one of my favourite albums of all time. So I'm going to be praising it a lot. I mean, obviously, but I'm being honest, fellas. I really am. This is Black and Other Priests. Even taken out of context from the album, is an amazing song. So if you follow Parasite with that, I mean, you can't take a breath. It's just ridiculously insane. Tony's lyric is intense. His bass playing is just, again, sorry, comrade, thunderously far apart from yours. Much more musical, much more intriguing in his use of time signatures. Much more, feels like just more honed musicianship. Anyway, Russell. Then we move on to, again, speed. My God, the speed of this album. I've said here that it would give some of these thrash bands a race they could not win. I mean, this was the era of thrash, 89 to 90, when Metallica were hitting their straps, and Megadeth, and Exodus, and all those, Testament. These guys would absolutely blow their balls off for speed and for just intensity. Carnivorous, again, it's the way that Tone delivers it. Carnivorous, it's just, it takes you. It's what rock and roll, to me. The sound of this song is what rock and roll really, truly is. It's the heart and soul of rock and roll. It's fast, it's dirty, it's fun, it's aggressive. It's only 2 and a bit minutes long. It doesn't hang around. And Mantis' guitar here is exquisite. It's textured, it's fast, it's clean, it's dirty, it's technical. It's just it sounds to me like the sort of stuff that that a lot of the punk bands were doing. I mean, of course, we know, if you know anything about Venom, they're more akin to the punk movement than they were the new wave of British heavy metal. I think they like that moniker. They're more just heavy metal with a punk bass, that lo-fi rock and roll sound. Just amazing. Yeah, it took my breath away the first time I've heard it. You almost need to be experienced in this sort of music to really get your head around it, because it's not round for long, but while it's there, it will crush your balls against the wall. It really will, guys. It will pummel your head into the crowd. You need to know what you're doing if you headbang into this song. Just say that. So if you're learning to do headbang, don't do it to Carnivorous. I also think this is probably the proto, extreme metal thrash song. I think it's the sort of song that most of those bands would listen and go, hey, guys, we can do this. What if we can get it faster? It's okay to get it faster, but can you make it musical? And these guys have got it fast, but musical. So that's the Tone influence. That's Tony's musicality in conjunction with Jeff's genius and the power of Abaddon on the Skins. Anyway, I've talked enough about this album so far. I'm going to take a breath. I need to get a cup of tea. We'll flip it over and look at the other side. We'll talk to you about the other songs on this album after the break. Talk to you soon. Welcome back, guys. I've just got my cup of tea, soothed the old vocal chords. Moving on to the next track. So here we come into Skeletal Dance, or Skeletal Dance, depending where you come from, guys. Now, I did say that I love every song on this album, and I do love them all. There's just one slight song that doesn't quite sit for me in the mix, and this is it. I'm not quite sure why, to be honest with you. I think it's because it's a very simple song lyrically, and it sits more like something from an extreme punk album, something the Exploited would have with Wattie on vocals, or Crass, or Extreme Noise Terror. It's extreme, which I love. It's just not as musical, I don't think, as the other albums. It goes along at an aggressive pace. It's very sing-along. It just doesn't quite sit with me. Sorry, guys. It feels almost blasphemous to say this about one of your songs, or if you're listening, guys, one of the Venom songs. I still love it. Don't get me wrong. I don't skip it. It just doesn't sit with me as well. And I'm sure the band would have songs that they've released and put on albums that just don't sit with them. Again, it just feels a little bit unfinished, a little bit rushed, a little bit tacked on. Yeah, so I don't want to say any bad about it, because it's not a bad song. If you put it on another album, and probably even if you put it at the end of the album instead of the mix where it is, I'd probably love it. It's following Carnivorous, you need to follow a master stroke like that with a little bit more thought, and I just think that's in the wrong area on the album. Anyway, it still is amazing, it's still wonderful, it just doesn't do it for me. So Russell. Then with this next song, this is something that says from Tony, from Jeff, and from Abaddon, that this is what we are about. They're covering 1975 Sabbath classic Megalomania. A very tricky thing to do. They could not have done it with Conrad on bass and vocals. No way. Now, I know Tony, we've talked about this before. We've talked about it because he just released an album earlier in the year to raise money for the COVID victims in Italy. Sabatonero, which is basically a Sabbath cover album. Please go and buy it. Buy it. Put it on your turntable. All the money goes to great cause, and it is a fucking great album. All right, I've got my copy. I love my copy. I reviewed it for for Metal Ruse website. Go and check out the review, www.metalruse.com. Go and check it out. It's an amazing album. You can see why Tony loves Sabbath. This particular song is full of reverence. It's beautifully covered. It doesn't take any liberties. It's not changing anything. It could almost be, and oh God, I'm going to say this, it could almost be Sabbath. Tone's lyric is powerful. His reverence to the lyric, and his ability to, when he spits out the lyric, is just beautiful. His bass covering, he's a genius on the bass. I'm going to say it. I'm putting it in there. I've got several bass players in my life that I listen to, who, as a bass player myself, who I adore, and he's in that list. All right, so wonderful. And then you got, it's very difficult for a drummer to copy Bill Ward. Very tricky, but Abaddon does it well. Mantis or Jeff on guitars, and I know he's got the rhythm guitar with him as well, Al, but you can always hear Jeff's guitar. He has that sound, and it just is wonderful. Not much more I can say. Most of us here have heard Megalomania off of the Sabotage album. If we haven't, Stop this podcast right now. Switch over, listen to that, then listen to Primeval, which is available on Spotify, and listen to the two versions, and you'll see there is a wondrous reverence to it. And again, as I said right back to beginning this review, musicality only comes from great musicality, this particular song, right? And then we don't take a breath. There's no stopping here, guys. You go, right, I've come out from that. What next? I can't rest. We go into Insane. Now, this lyric is delicious, okay? The speed is insane. I said before the Carnivorous was fast. This is even more fast. This for 89 was furious, all right? You can smell the burning flesh of Jeff's guitar solos. You can hear the thundering kick drums that Abaddon is putting to. It's almost, you can feel the skin wanting to just explode. You got Tony's bass pick blurring away at those heavy strings. It's a master stroke of pure rock and roll heavy metal. This album is sadly forgotten to the world. If people don't listen to this kind of music, they'll go to 89. They're going to go to the Black Album. They're going to go to, sorry, that might be 1990, but anyway, they were going to go for those big albums. It's going to get overlooked. And then there were Venom fans who was, it's not Kronos, I'm not listening to it. Well, all I can say to you, if you're one of those people, you've missed out on so much good stuff. I hope this review, if you're listening to it, makes you go and want to go and listen to the album. There is a sense of, we're coming to the finish line on this album, and we want to get faster and faster, and we want to get harder and harder, and we're going to just... It's almost as well, guys, the joyousness in Tone's being with the band. He clearly adored. We would have seen them on the scene. They would have played together on the same venues. They're around the same time. And of course, Venom were making albums that were selling big. Atom Craft was still underground. To some extent, they sold lots of records, but they weren't selling the kind of numbers that Venom was selling. They didn't have sell-out tours with Metallica as their support act, and 7 Dates of Hell at Hammersmith Odeon. So this is a cornerstone band. This is as important to rock and roll as the Pistols and to the Beatles and to the Beach Boys and to Black Sabbath and Deep Purple and Motorhead. They are one of those bands, and so he clearly was, sorry. He's clearly, you can hear the joyousness in his album. He must have had a great, I don't know, I must ask him one day if he enjoyed recording it, but it clearly sounds like he did. So we move from Insane, and then we get to, I think, my second favourite song on this side of the album. I mean, my first favourite song is Insane. The second favourite song on this album, Harder Than Ever. What a sing-along classic. It's perfect Venom. It's more Venom, and venomous. I can't say the word. It's more venomousy than Venom. You know what I mean? It's sing-along, it's dramatic. It makes your head shake. It makes your feet tap. It's a pro of a song. I'm not going to sing. I can't do the vocals and the singing any justice, but the sing-along aspect of it, again, Tone puts away the rolling R's. Say that again in a Dark Night. Puts away his rolling R's and has this joyous, almost pop-esque attack at sing-along heavy metal. It's something that's very new wave of British heavy metal. It's very early 80s almost. This is the thing about this album. This album's out of time. It doesn't have a place where you go, oh, that sounds dated. Not once you put this on and go, this sounds dated. Albums from the late 80s, early 90s, most of them sound very badly produced. They're stretched too many songs to the CD era. They're thin because everyone's got these new digital desks. I'm sure it's probably recorded on a Neve. I'll have to check into that where it was recorded. But if it's got to do with the producer, he would have definitely Tauber. He would have definitely used a Neve, I reckon. Fantastic sound. Much more I could say about it, and it truly is one word, intense. It's intensely fun. And then we move swiftly into the Fire. This has a very Nick Tauber-y feel. Now, if you've listened to any Nick Tauber produced albums, this is that. So, in 84, Marillion released Fugazi. Now, I'm not going to talk about Marillion here. They are my favourite neo-prog band. Fugazi is one of my favourite albums. Just reissued recently. Fucking amazing. But Nick Tauber produced it. Now, on there, he uses lots of intricate, off-the-wall sound effects. He likes to create atmosphere. And he's done this here into the Fire. It's got someone's tuning into a radio in. And it hits the radio station and boomf, you're into the song. Okay? It's this is Abaddon's Time to Shine on the drums here. I've written mellifluous syncopation. You say that after 5 beers. Mellifluous syncopation. So it's fluid, it's aggressive, it's funky, it's rhythmic, it's almost swing. It's like Clive Burr-esque drum type sound. It has Mantis guitar. I think this is the second best guitar thing on the album for Mantis. Again, textured, layered, clean, aggressive, fun, entertaining. God, my keyboard. Sorry, look. Tap, tap, tap. I keep saying things like thunderous, but it's true, you know. Tones, bass, and vocals I think it's just the way they've recorded this, the way that they've mixed it, that you don't lose anything in the mix. Tones, vocals, and bass are prominent. The guitars and drum mix beautifully. There's not a bit where you go, I wish I'd lifted that or dropped that or moved that. Again, the only thing I can say is skeletal dance, but we've covered that. Correct? Into the Fire, another sing-along classic, another live, dramatic. I'd love to hear this live. Tone, if you hear this when you come into Canberra, hopefully next year, delayed because of COVID, please, 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 Into the Fire or Harder Than Ever. You don't have to. I'm clearly not. You're the boss, but I would love to hear that. And then we go into the last track of the song. What can I say about this track? If you know Venom, you'll know a song called Teacher's Pet. Okay. Now, I was raised in the 70s, like a lot of the guys listening to this podcast, like the guys in the band. I mean, a little bit older than me, so they were older in the 70s, but they knew it more than we. We were raised on carry-on movies and 70s sitcoms and a time when you could make a double entendre and you weren't expelled or woked out of existence. And this song is that. They even quote Teacher's Pet within the lyric. I think this is just their nod to Conrad, nod to his naughtiness. Musically, it sounds like Kiss to me, and I know that Mantis is a massive, massive Kiss fan. So I think this is his tribute, sonically, lyrically, and stylistically to Kiss. Now you might listen to it and go, I don't hear any Kiss tone. I do. I hear rock and roll. I hear, it's a bit more rude than Kiss or ever were, but it's Venom. You don't expect Venom to be PG. So it's like a X-rated version of a Kiss song. It's full of double entendres. It's rock and roll. It's just, and I bloody love it. I mean, it's naughty. I like the way it's at the end because it's like having a good meal and this is your fun pudding, right? You've gone through all the meat and gristle of the meal and this is the end where you get a bit of sweetness, just a bit of a laugh, a little levity and brevity before the album finishes. And at 39 minutes and 50 seconds, it doesn't hang around. Is this the best Venom album? I think it is. Is this the best Venom album without Conrad? Yes, it is. Is this the best Venom album all over? Sorry, probably not the best of them, because it's very, very hard to go past any of the first 3 albums. Very, very difficult, purely for the historical meaning and their ability to create and further a musical genre. But is this the best album where a band has got a new vocalist and changed their sound? I think it's on par with Maiden when Bruce came in. Maiden were never going to be any bigger than they were without Bruce. And I think, truly, even though I listened to all the Conrad Venom albums, because there are two Venoms now. There is Venom Inc., which is Tony Dolan, Mantis, and the new drummer. I'm sorry, whose name eludes me. One moment. I will get back to you on that. Okay, sorry about that. Yes, it's Jermaine the War Machine Kling. Now, the reason I forgot that name, I'm sorry, Jermaine, is because I'm used to Venom Inc. when Abaddon was drummer, but he has left since there's a new drummer, and it's in between albums because Abaddon played on Ave. What an amazing album. That's for another podcast. So there are two incantations of Venom. So Venom Inc. and Venom with Conrad and his other band. I love both of them equally as much, possibly more Venom Inc., to be honest, guys, because two of the most, powerful members of metal are in that band. Well, three were when Abaddon was in the band. Anyway, so what was I saying? I completely lost my train of thought there because I was looking for his name. Anyway, so is it the best? Yes, it is. I think like I said, they wouldn't have gone any further without. I think would have bubbled along, of course, but would they have made a classic like Primeval? No. And there are other albums after this that Tony has done, which we'll talk about another time, which again are stone cold classics. Okay, guys. So go out there. It has been reissued. You can buy. It's harder to get the vinyl copies now because they were only limited. I got the gold one, the yellow one. I got the yellow cassette and the red cassette, I think. And I've got the CDs. And I've also got the original. I mean, I must admit, I have to have them all. It's an old man's folly, but who cares? Anyway, please go out and listen to it. If they're in your town, if they're in your city, wherever you are in the world, please go and see them. And if you've liked this podcast and you've enjoyed what I've said, please leave a review on any of the podcast forums that you ways you listen to podcasts. I am contactable at heavymetaltones@gmail.com. That's heavymetaltones@gmail.com, or at my Facebook page, which is NWOBHM and All Things Metal. That's NWOBHM and All Things Metal. Come over and say hello. I'd love to know what your favourite Venom songs are, how you feel about this album. Reach out and let me know. I hope you enjoyed the review. It is a stellar album. It's musically just a fabulous piece of 39 minutes and 50 seconds, sorry. Anyway, that's me rambling on, getting to the end of my record time. I need another cup of tea. Keep safe, guys. Keep rocking. Put some Venom on your stereo, guys, and let it rock.